You're not weird, you're a limited edition. Kobe Yamada wrote, "Embrace your uniqueness. Time is much too short to be living someone else's life." Hi, I'm Timothy Paulson, and this is the Totalityism Podcast, session number 8. The Totalityism Podcast is about merging art and theology to help you become everything God created you to be. I've written a book on that. I have podcasts on this. This is what I do. And I'm excited about sharing with you today an idea that first of all revolves around you being, and I don't use this word very often, awesome. I don't use that word very often because I am rarely in awe of things, but I am in awe of God. I'm in awe of how awesome His creations are, including you. You are remarkable. You are unique. You are so remarkable and unique that you deserve to have a portrait of you hanging in an art museum. Now, I'm in art museums all the time. I love, as I travel, visiting art museums around the world, and I have my own art gallery with the art that I create as part of the art movement of the 21st century, totalityism. So when I say you deserve to have a portrait of you, I'm actually kind of serious. I recorded this podcast to help you unlearn a limiting mindset and become the best version of yourself possible. Would that be helpful to you? If so, listen on. Uniqueness is what makes you the most beautiful. Here's an anonymous saying. Being the best is great. You're the number one. But unique is greater. You're the only one. So let me repeat, you are not weird. You're simply a limited edition. Here's a story to illustrate the point. Some time ago, I was in New Orleans on vacation with my wife, my daughter Jenny, and her husband Adam. We were excited one morning because we were going to visit the New Orleans Museum of Art, known as the NOMA. Now again, being an artist, I love to visit museums around the world as I travel. It's one of my favorite things to do. That morning, we grabbed a quick bite at a fast food restaurant. And as we were eating, I saw an old homeless man sitting at a table drinking coffee. I admired him. I thought he was a very interesting looking man. As he left the restaurant, I felt compelled to speak with him, so I followed. By the time I got outside, he was sitting on the sidewalk, leaning up against a wall. He had a University of Alabama knit hat on, and I told him how impressed I was with Alabama's football team. We got to chatting, and I learned his name is Dave, and that he was trying to get back to Alabama where he's from. I said to him, "You're a cool-looking guy. I'll tell you what, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if I can take your picture." I'm sure he was more pleased by the compliment than he was with the money. I took his picture, chatted a bit longer, and wished him a good day. Then we went off to the NOMA. Now guess who was waiting for me there? The first room we went into at the museum was the Dutch art room to the right of the front desk. The very first painting I saw was titled Portrait of an Elderly Bearded Man, 1640, by Jan Levens, a friend and contemporary of Rembrandt. I jokingly said to my family, "Hey, here's a portrait of Dave." It then hit me that if there was a painting of Dave hanging in the art museum, visitors would admire and respect his image as well. But instead, the world sees Dave as an old homeless man looking for his next handout. Now, when I got back to my studio in Utah, I thought about the irony of seeing a painting of an elderly man with a beard on display in a museum, admired by thousands of visitors each year, while a living and breathing representation of the same subject was sitting on a sidewalk, ignored. I decided to paint a picture of Dave. I wanted to bring dignity and respect to him while illustrating what I've coined the private museum principle. Now, the private museum principle is something that I've written about in my book, Totality X. I love to talk about this, and I'll talk about it in other episodes of my podcast as well. Some people are artists. Some themselves are art. As I've said before, I'm a bit of an art whisperer, and that I discover things when I paint. It's one of the most enjoyable things about creating art. Ideas and principles come to my mind as I paint. The private museum principle is about how the environment something is placed in, a piece of art, for example, affects its prestige and value. The environment you put yourself in mentally and physically affects the way you feel about yourself as well. Interesting, isn't it? I originally coined the private museum principle when I purchased a $7 yard sale painting and transformed it into a totally cool abstract painting. Now, to tell you a short version of the story will be helpful because it spawned the principle that relates to the painting I did of Dave in New Orleans and to you as well. The $7 yard sale painting transformed into a $1 million piece of art. Walt Disney wrote, "The more you like yourself, the less you are like anyone else, which makes you unique." Years ago, I bought an old dusty yard sale painting for $7. Later, I decided to transform it into an abstract work, and I hung it in its own private room in my studio. I put a crowd-controlled rope in front of it to give it a museum-like feel to the space. I titled the work "Rise from the Dust." I put a viewing seat in the room, reminiscent of a prestigious gallery or museum. I added lights and a security camera as well. It was after the painting was in a museum-like setting that I priced it at $1 million. Aesop wrote, "A man is known by the company he keeps." Today, when people enter the room with the painting and hear the price is $1 million, they say things like, "Wow, so cool, awesome, $1 million? That's epic." Whether it's a day, a month, a year, or more after a person visits my studio, Rise from the Dust, the $1 million painting, is the one they talk about when I speak to them again. My famous artist dad, Buck Paulson, he's introduced me to others as my son, the artist who painted a $1 million painting. Now let's apply this to the homeless man and to you. When I looked at Dave in New Orleans, I could have chosen to see him as an old, dirty, homeless man, but instead I saw him as a majestic man with a beard from Alabama. I saw complete beauty in him, and there is complete beauty in you as well. When you visit my virtual gallery at paulsonartshow.com, you'll see the painting of my friend Dave in New Orleans. The painting is titled "Homeless and Elegant." Andy Warhol wrote, "Everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it." As I mentioned before, you're one of a kind. There's absolutely no one else just like you. It would be appropriate for your image to be hanging on the wall of a museum somewhere. Imagine this. I paint your picture. I put it into an impressive frame and in its own museum-like setting. I, of course, place a very high price on your portrait, and it's purchased by a wealthy art collector who loans it to a museum such as the National Gallery in London for people from around the world to admire. What I've just described is one way to get your portrait into a museum, but admittedly it isn't likely to happen that way, but that's not my point. What I do want is for you to go down a mental path with me, to trigger a feeling that you are as worthy as anyone to be shown in a museum. You can do this figuratively by putting yourself in the prestigious art gallery or art museum of your mind. Yes, I belong there is what I invite you to feel and say, because you do. So I say, don't wait. Here's what Deepak Chopra said. Each of us is a unique strand in the intricate web of life and here to make a contribution. Did you notice I didn't wait for someone else to come along and proclaim "Rise from the Dust," a $1 million painting? I did that myself. It was natural for me to do so after I put it into an honored, revered, and respected state. You can mentally do the same thing with yourself. Honor, revere, and respect yourself. Focus on your uniqueness, your potential, and your awesomeness. Mentally put yourself into a museum-like state. That's where you belong. There's an old saying, whatever you focus on expands. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote, beautiful young people are accidents of nature, but beautiful old people are works of art. There is beauty in everyone. We sometimes have difficulty seeing it because we don't really look for it. We don't focus on it. Too often we focus on our imperfections and our shortcomings, and really we focus on the shortcomings and imperfections of others as well. But you can indeed find whatever it is you're looking for. Whatever you focus on expands, including beauty and awesomeness in you in every way. Now let me relate this to totalitarianism. Again, totalitarianism, it's the new art movement of the 21st century. It is utilizing art as a catalyst to help you become everything God created you to be. Now think about Dave in New Orleans for a minute. Again, the individual whom I painted this portrait of. He is a beloved child of God. He has divine potential, and so do you. I recorded this podcast to help you unlearn a limiting mindset and become the best version of yourself. You are an extraordinary person, someone who is spectacular, worthy of being admired by thousands of visitors in a museum. I'm suggesting you look for the beauty in yourself. Matthew 7, verse 7, seek and ye shall find. When you seek the awesomeness, the beauty, the remarkable nature within yourself, you will find it. And be sure to look for it in others as well. Dave in New Orleans, I found it in him. I immortalized it in a portrait of him. And I am delighted that I did. Jesus loves every person you'll ever encounter. He died on the cross for you and every person you meet, every person on earth. Looking at people as if they are children of God. That's different, isn't it? It changes the environment, doesn't it? So again, be sure to do that with others. Be sure to do that with you. So in conclusion, I say, you're not weird. You're a limited edition. Onward and upward you go.